What's happening on this planet is that all of humanity is being asked to level up. Many people who do not level up are struggling through the past repetitive thoughts, behaviors, and habits, and find themselves stagnant, find themselves in a rut, and overall find themselves dissatisfied. The future of this planet is one of higher dimensional living. But these habits, behaviors, and thought forms that we have are no match for this higher dimensional living. So that's the great dilemma. We all know that this planet is changing, and that what was before is seeming to be radically deconstructed. It may appear subtle in some areas of the world. In other areas of the world, it seems very radical, right? This deconstruction of these past behaviors, habits, and thought forms. We are at a very interesting time on the planet. We're at a transitional period as we leave behind the Piscean Age and also begin to balance out the patriarch. In the patriarchal paradigm, we are at the cusp, and we are now beginning to transform into the Aquarian breed. And the Aquarian age marks the balance between the patriarchal and the matriarchal. So that's why on this planet the main shift we're seeing, right? The front runner for this turn of event that's happening on this planet is led by a matriarchal teachings. So we hear everywhere in this New Age community or New Age movement that simply is about leveling up and finding tools, methods, technologies, and modalities and remedies that can help us to level up as efficient, as quickly as possible, so that these past behaviors, habits, and thought forms do not destroy us. So this is a matriarchal teaching that's coming to this planet, right? A matriarchal culture that has been oppressed in the patriarchal paradigm, right? And the matriarchal teachings have been stored within various communities all around this planet, right? Where these teachings have been preserved and they have continue to be taught in the form of meditation, the form of Chinese medicine, Qigong, Tai Chi, when we think of Vedic tradition and Vedic astrology and Vedic medicine, right? When we think of the healing arts, we're brought into the matriarchal's domain. Anything about the healing arts is the matriarchal's domain. So what that means right now for us in this pioneering New Age movement that's happening, that everything you see that's about this New Age movement is about self-psychology, reprogramming the mind, reparenting the mind, working with the subconscious, deconstructing traumas in the subconscious. Everything when it comes to Kundalini yoga, when it comes to manifestation, alchemy, awareness, breath, somatics, these healing modalities, these healing arts, this healing science, right? That is pioneering in our health and wellness industry, and as well as in our lifestyle. We're starting to see these healing arts, this healing science becoming very prevalent and very prominent in our health and wellness industry. And also it's beginning to integrate in other areas, such as a corporation, and integrating this healing science, healing art in corporation, in education. Right. We're starting to see it being integrated into community, right? We're seeing it being integrated even in our sort of political world, even in our economy. We're starting to see this healing science and this healing art really becoming headliners in our economy, as individuals are becoming quite prolific and quite lucrative off of the healing science, healing science and the healing arts, right? When it comes to self-psychology, and a method of exercise that is for healing the body, right? Somatics, so many things, right? Chinese medicine, Vedic meal preparation. So many things in our health and wellness industry is really taking headline in our economy, right? So that really is an indication that we are beginning to balance out this patriarchal paradigm, and a part of the balance, right, as we sort of equalize, right, and we find more fairness between our past and our future, right, is we're starting to see a movement of healing. And that's what everything is going on this planet. It's a movement of healing. And we did not recognize this, right? We thought it was like, the 70s hippie movement of free love that was about drugs and sex, and eventually led to some AIDS and these kinds of things. But we're starting to understand that there actually is a practical, science to this healing, in that this healing, a lot of it, the healing science is, most of it is much older than the traditional pharmaceutical method of repairing your body or your mind. A lot of these healing arts, many of them date thousands of years in history. That way before they have nowhere, the pharmaceutical companies can't even touch the amount of time that this healing arts and this healing science has been here on this planet. May not have been here in the United States of America because we're very young, but definitely the pharmaceutical companies can't even touch the depth of this healing science and this healing art. But a lot of it has been discredited because the whole, basically, femininity has been discredited. Femininity has been outcasted and has been told that it has no relevance, that it's not important to the patriarchal the patriarchal domain. So the healing arts and the healing science, which is very much a sort of a female energy, has been very much locked away. It's been very much locked away, and we've been programmed to view this feminine, right, this feminine energy, these healing science or healing modalities, in a way that we don't believe in it. We don't believe it, right? We don't believe it. Right, especially in these areas in the United States of America that are very heavy with even white supremacy, and you talk about these southern areas where there's still heavy forms of discrimination and slavery and sort of warlike behavior, right, and this kind of patriarchal ego sort of stubbornness that you see, right? There's a lot of that ego stubbornness that's very much a patriarchal identity. It has very much does not believe in the healing science and the healing art, right? Discredits it, deems it as unfit, unright, right? It's not correct. So if we are to level up, and you'll see that with people who are leveling up and people who are not, the individuals who are not leveling up are kind of going crazy because they're carrying all of this. We all have the human condition, right? We all have the human condition in its basic feelings, which is I'm not good enough, shame, and emotional pain, right? And when those individuals who don't level up, right, who are just leaving themselves in the human condition unchecked, especially at this time, a lot of them are going crazy, right? With this low self, I'm not good enough, and the emotional pain and the shame. It's more heavy now than it was before, because we're being asked by Mother Gaia to face these things, and individuals who are not facing them are finding it very difficult to live on this planet, right? Because the past and the repeating of the past, it's not working, right? And where we come from, unfortunately, there is a lot of I'm not good enough and shame and emotional pain. So what's going on is that we are deconstructing realities. And that's why there's this great desire to explore other realities. Either the people do that through drugs, they try to do that through alcohol, or through meditation, through yoga, right? Through breathing, through nature, forest bathing. People are literally they're hunting for other realities because they know this reality of the past repeating thought form, behavior, and habit really isn't a reality that has much energy to it. So people are doing these kinds of things, for alcohol or drugs, just because they know that this reality that most of us have believed to be true, we know that this isn't it. That this reality we all deem as true, it doesn't have much energy to it. So a lot of us were hunting for higher energy, because we know reality is about energy. Reality isn't about just hanging in, I don't feel good about myself, shame, and emotional pain for your whole entire life, and then call it a life. There's no energy to that. There's no energy to that. So everybody at this time is being asked to level up. And this transition is a big one, right? And many people they're right on the mark, and many people are finding their way towards the mark, and many people are very, very, very resistant, very fixed, very like hard, right? Like molten rock. So we have all kinds of different groups of people. We have the hard molten rock, which they resist this turn of event big time, and they will do anything they can to resist the kicking and screaming and that kind of thing. And we do see that, right? The kicking and screaming type of group of people who really are resisting this turn of event. And then we see people who are they question, and they're uncertain, but they're flexible, meaning they're open if the information is accurate, and the information is it has merit to it, right? And then there's individuals, probably you are in this category if you're listening to this, who are what we call front runners, those who are futurists, right? Those who are already kind of ahead of the trend, right? Ahead of the curve, right? So this period that we will see, right, particularly until 2036, because that's when we start to really go into the Aquarian age, go into deep, right? And this whole period, or in 2020 to 2036 and even so on, is really about deprogramming a lot of these habits, behaviors, and thought forms that we have in our past model, because this past model of our parents, grandparents, great grandparents, it's not going to work for us, right? We need a totally new model, a human design that we're not going to find in the past. And that's why a lot of us feel out of place and we don't feel like we belong, or things don't fit. Like things just don't feel like they fit. Like we're in an age of technology, but we have these same habits and behaviors and thought forms of our grandparents, right? Who were like in World War II, and even our great grandparents, and it doesn't fit. There's a huge sort of difference between the generation that's here, the young people that are now, and the grandparents, right, who were like in World War II. There's a huge difference in these young people and these older people. They belong to two different human designs, and yet the great dilemma is that these younger generations, they know they're meant to vibrate. They're meant to vibrate in a different way, but they are not entirely sure what that is, right? So it's like the past and the future. What do I choose? Do I just do what the past says I should be doing and just do what the programming my brain says I should do based on what my parents and grandparents have done, or should I be what's more natural for me as a young person, which is vibrate in a different way? So that's the great sort of challenge for particularly these young generations, because some of their parents are very, very much struggling with this turn of event. And the younger kids, they're very, very sensitive and intuitive, and they're already basically futurists. But they see the parents, and they even see the society, and how we are sort of very uncomfortable with letting go of the past. We're very uncomfortable with letting go of these past behaviors and habits and thought forms and just ego and identity. We're very uncomfortable, right, with basically reforming our relationship with self, relationship with spouse, relationship with kid, or even with our work, and even with our community. Again, in different regions on this planet, you'll see that some regions are ahead, some regions of this world they're making the adjustments, and some regions of this world are really like kicking and screaming because of there's major resistance, because a lot of people are very hard. They're hard like rock, and they're trying to bring like an update to somebody who's hard as rock. It's not going to happen, right? Unless with major sort of endurance and persistence and continued effort, right? So what's really the focus for ourselves right now, and you'll see this as the sort of you'll see this as the sort of introduction to the healing science and the healing arts, and that is the mind, right? The sort of introduction to this new age movement, or this Aquarian age, or this new human design, is about the mind, and it's about the reparenting of the mind, right? And a lot of us in the science community and the artist community are finding inventive ways of reparenting the mind and the mind, because we understand that the mind carries mostly the past. The mind it does not carry much of we call it futurist perspective. It carries mostly the past. And how we know that is because most of us have the same I'm not good enough, shame and emotional pain, and that has nothing to do with the future. That's everything to do with the past, right? So reparenting of the mind is more wiring it towards like a futurist perspective, not talking about living where we have anxiety about the future. I'm talking about futurist represents an expansion. It represents creative expansion. It represents a higher awareness, a higher intelligence, right? When we think of the futurist, we think of an individual who is able to think in ways that bring about victory and great creativity, right? But a lot of our mind is not in that sort of vibration. It's in more the vibration of conflict. Like we all have this mental conflict, this inner conflict with ourselves, right? And that's why we don't feel like we belong, and we don't feel like we fit, and we feel low, we feel down, we feel depressed, we feel anxious, because the reality in our mind is mostly about the past and why we're bound to the past, and why the past isn't leaving us, and why we're repeating the past, and why we feel ashamed and embarrassed because of the past, right? And then we feel really, really haggard and worn down by the past, right? So, and the great turn of event that's happening on this planet when it comes to moving forward, not back, right, is that we are finding again modalities, remedies, tools, medicine, right, called healing arts, healing science, that can reparent the mind and bring more of a futuristic perspective. That's about expansion of the mind, not about the past of the mind, right? So we're wanting to remodel the mind through new choices, new ideas, new beliefs, new thoughts. And that's what this whole kind of turn of event is about, working with the mind. We're working with tradition, because tradition has a lot of ancient wisdom to it, in the form of the Chinese medicine and Kundalini yoga and these sort of healing science that have been here basically since ancient Egypt and before that. So a lot of these traditions have a lot of credibility and merit, even though the patriarchal domain does not accept it, because it is not in the game of the patriarch, right? Which is most of the game of the patriarch has been about profit, right? Making profit. And a lot of these traditions are not about profit, it's about community. And community is of exchange, and a lot of the patriarchal domain is about profit for the one, for the God, not for the exchange. It's for I am the profitable one, and everybody else is, I'm not exchanging that with you guys, right? So it's a withholding of the profit, right? While the traditions of like Kundalini yoga and these ancient, more matriarchal cultures have been about community exchange. So that's why you see mostly tribes there's a lot of sort of artistic expression, because a lot of the currency, the exchange was about through the arts, right? The remedies, the exchange of medicine or herbs, or the exchange of art, or the exchange of tools, or the exchange of clothing, right? And the patriarchal domain was not so much about that. It was more so about, I want it all for myself and my lineage, because I'm the privileged one, right? So very, very different kind of identity going on in a very different mind stream. So the mind stream that we have right now, there's a lot of like poverty consciousness, there's a lot of like I'm not good enough, emotional pain, there's a lot of shame, right? Because we've been shamed by our parents, society, for being a woman, for being a man, for being black, white, Hispanic, you name it. We also have the emotional pain because a part of this human condition in the patriarchal domain was we didn't really get what we wanted. We worked hard, we didn't really get what we wanted. We didn't really receive. We don't know how to receive. We don't really know how to give, because there's been a sort of discord or dysfunction about our natural way of giving and receiving, right? There's a lot of giving, and there's a lot of generosity being taken advantage of and abused, and receiving being very much about deception and desperation and all these kinds of things, right? There's a lot of sense of disorder in our mind, right? Where we don't really know how to bring fairness to our own mental state. We don't really know how to have thought forms that actually are just and actually have a sense of victory to it. So we talk about this spiritual awakening happening, right? It's actually becoming more credible because a lot more people are experiencing, not just in one area of the world, but everywhere. People are experiencing this sort of expansion in the mind, right? So we can call it spiritual awakening. Some people even call it like mental reprogram that's going on, and that can, for some people who don't understand what's going on to them, they can think that they're having like a mental collapse, or they're just having some sort of mental issue going on, right? So the mind is being triggered by this technology age, and the mind is being triggered to really take on a new human design. And again, the healing arts, the healing science is offering us mantras. Mantras I use as a very good example because mantras are very ancient. I see them as one of the most ancient sort of healing of the mind tools. Right before yoga and that, I feel mantra was one of the primary medicines for the mind, even in ancient Egypt, right? Mantra was basically like a mental bath you would take, where the pyramid or the place, the building would be tuned to this mantra, and the mantra would basically gong out, and you would just sit there in silence in this sort of cave-like building, and you would just take in the mantra, right? You would just take it in, and basically what it would do, the constant mantra that would be playing maybe for hours, and you just sit there and just be quiet, is that it would program your mind to a high sound current, right? Because when your mind has a resonance to it, right? Your mind has a resonance to it, just like music. Listen to music. Music is simply an extension of the mind, as well as the spirit, right? But we know the mind and the spirit are connected, right? We know like the emotions and the mind are connected, right? When you have this sort of mental conflicts, your emotions respond to that, right? And when you have this emotional sort of reactivity or commotion, your mind responds to that. So your mind and heart respond to each other, right? So, you can kind of see where somebody's mental state is by listening to their voice, firstly, like really listen to their voice. And you can see, hearing them sing, you can see kind of their mind stream. And you can see how clean the mind stream is, or you can see how dirty the mind stream is, right? So, the mind, right, is going to be all the rage, and it is becoming all the rage right now, right? Because everything like herbalism and plant medicine and everything about Kundalini yoga and everything about self-psychology and the self-hypnosis, everything is about tuning the mind to a higher intelligence or a higher creativity, right? And the challenge, right, with that is tuning the mind. Is our mind is so used to being in this, I call it this swampy state. It's so used to being the swampy state, but the Aquarian age is not about a swampy mental state. The Aquarian age also represents the original thoughts of the mind, right? Original thoughts of the mind, but most of us don't have original thoughts. We have these swampy memories of the past, right? Like a great pipeline that has just all this sort of gunk in it, right? It's like your spirit is clean, as Yogi Bhajan says. Your spirit is the water that pours into your mind, but your mind is like a pipeline. And if your pipeline is like dirty like a sewage, you're not going to want to drink that water. Even if you put the holy water of Jesus Christ down the pipe of your mind, by the time it reaches the city, the city water fountain, you're not going to want to drink that water fountain, because the dirt in the swamp it had to go through, it has distorted it, the holy waters. And that's his Yogi Bhajan. And that's very much like the mind is like a pipeline, like a tunnel, right? And it's meant, mostly the mind is meant to be spacious, but all our minds are full of emotional pain and I'm not good enough and shame. So in order for us to really flush it out, right, this swampy pipeline that's creating all this backed up thoughts that really kind of creates these deep sort of negative attacks that we have towards ourselves, or there's just these aggressions, agitations we have within ourselves that for some people it can be, some people they can manage it, and some people they just go crazy, right? They just go crazy, right? Because the mind sensitivity is at all high right now. People are very sensitive in their mind. Their mind is really, really pressurized by this technology age. And that's why people who don't have a sort of practice of mantra recitation in the mind, like a higher sound current that can really keep the mind in a creative clarity, the mind will just get really fuzzy. We're seeing a lot of, people that they've got the fuzzy mind, they can't remember things, there's this forgetfulness or brain disease, or there's all these kinds of mind abnormal, we call these mind sort of dysfunctions that are happening, and these mind sort of collapses that are happening, because the mind, it needs to be fed, like it needs to be fed. Because most of our minds, the mind has been atrophied, right? It hasn't really been fed anything. And just feeding our mind with TV doesn't count, right? I mean, there's a time and place for that, but really the mind needs to be fed a higher sound current. And TV can offer a higher sound current. Music can offer a high sound current, right? But really a high sound current of what I've discovered is through the mantra and the mantra recitation. And that is an ancient, before TV and radio, there was mantra recitation, right? And mantra recitation would be going on all day long in these communities of meditative practitioners, right? And even in ancient Egypt, mantra recitation was one of the primary sort of medicines for the mind and tuning the mind to. So in ancient Egypt, we're very much kind of sort of parallel, very similar to the ancient Egypt, and for the young people, because a lot of the ancient Egyptians would use sort of medicine, plant medicine, to connect with higher dimensions of thought. Right, and we can see that in their sort of their pictures, and we can see that in their hieroglyphics, right? Their rituals and their ceremonies and their sort of ways of connecting to higher consciousness. And in their meditations, their trances, they would receive wisdom, and they would receive sort of encounters. They would say like other beings, right? And us as young people, we're kind of following in that footsteps, except we're using like drugs or heavy duty drugs that it can be very poisonous to the mind, right? To try to get that altered state of consciousness where basically young people, they're hungry, their mind is hungry for a higher reality experience. Hungry. It's like they would do anything to expand their mind and open up their consciousness, because the mind wants to be fed. The mind is starved. It's like almost like dehydrated, and then and it wants to be fed. It wants to be nourished, right? It wants to be cleaned. It wants to be flushed, right? And that's why a lot of these young generations and people, they are trying to find anything they can do to get that sort of state, and that's all the rage for the young people. I want to connect with I want to connect with a different reality. I want to connect with a higher reality, right? So we see these young people, like they know that this reality that most people have chosen, there's no energy, right? It's like there's the creativity and the higher intelligence just seems off, right? These young people look around, there's something off, right? There's something off about us and the human species, right? So, and that's what we're kind of doing. The mantra, it comes from ancient Egypt, right? And it has traveled to the Middle East and India, where mantra is very well integrated in these geographic regions, right? And a part of the mind's hunger, right, in why it's different than like the Piscean age or the, in our parents' generation or grandparents' generation and so on back, is that we as human beings, our human species and our genetic code is now, it has an evolutionary need for this mantra, these mantras, right? Well, before, human species was still, you can say it was still at a sort of pre-adolescence period, right? That's why we didn't really need it, because our mind, our mind was not ready for it. Our mind was under, like a child, like it wasn't ready, right? But now, right, as human beings, we're being initiated into the next evolution of our human genetic code, right? So we're unlocking and we're unblocking a lot of, we can call it mystic teachings, magic teachings, manifestation teachings, and just overall we're really unlocking sort of a visionary human genetic code that many humans have, right? When we look at visionaries on this planet throughout time, but now we're seeing it in the masses, not just 1, 2, 3, 5. We're looking at masses, because a part of the next evolutionary phase, right, of human, as we're moving beyond the patriarchal domain and moving more into a balance between matriarchal and patriarchal perspective and lifestyle, is that we are just near beginning to become a sort of a cosmic being, a cosmic human, not just an earthbound human, of a cosmic human. And this is something that's thousands and thousands of years in the future, right? A cosmic human, because that's just the next phase for us. The patriarch was wonderful at giving us city-states, roadways, institutions, structures, architecture, religion, wonderful at giving us government, a sort of a republic, democracy, and of course there has been errors, right, and mistakes and these kinds of things, but the patriarch got us thus far, where we have skyscrapers and we have, corporations, institution, we have business, right, we have economy, these kinds of things, but the one thing that's missing is that we need matriarchal healing arts and healing science, because that is what's going to help us to be even better, right? And that unfortunately was sort of oppressed within the planet, not just one area, but a lot of places. The healing arts, the healing science has been oppressed, right? But now the mind is being triggered, and the mind is hungry, so much so, for these mantras. And that's why these mantras are they are becoming, or will be becoming, one of the key elements to unlocking the mind and to giving people that altered state of consciousness. Because in that altered state of consciousness, they can start to view their emotional pain, their shame, their I'm not good enough. They can start to view it, review it, and revolve it, right? And they can start to reprogram it when they have that altered state of consciousness over a period of time, like where they consistently, go in like a kind of scientist. they go into their mind through the mantra, and they start to allow the mantra current of it, which is belonging to a higher dimensional reality on earth, a different paradigm of earth, to that sound current will begin to soak up the mind, and it will naturally begin to eliminate these sort of atrophy thoughts, these sort of sort of toxic thoughts, and these destroyer thoughts, right? Because a lot of our brains, it's almost like our brains are programmed to not have victory, right? Or victory is something that's very hard because our mind doesn't believe in victory, right? So we've all been programmed to not have victory, right? That we're not, there's all these reasons why victory is not for us, right? So, and a lot of these conditioning have been really, really harsh too, like brutal. We have been brutally conditioned to take on these thought forms and to have this human design that in many ways is not natural, but we have been brutally sort of whipped into becoming having this mind that we have. And those who were able to deconstruct and reparent it have been those who have a integration of matriarchal culture, right? These families, these lineages that have more of an open, expansive, vast mind, right? Where there's a lineage of like consciousness and higher intelligence, higher creativity, these kinds of things. The lineage or the family there is a matriarchal culture that you can see. And that's when we talk about Native American bloodlines and Middle Eastern bloodlines and Indian bloodlines. Certain particular bloodlines have a very strong matriarchal coding that is very, very powerful. So there's certain bloodlines like for example, even Native American, that have this deep just knowledge, this self-knowledge on the healing arts or the healing science, where it just comes like second nature because of the bloodline and because of the lineage, and how individuals in the lineage had a very strong matriarchal sound current, right, within the mind. And these heavy bloodlines that are very harsh and just solely patriarchal, very, very heavy and very, very harsh and sort of abrupt, authoritative. A lot of these individuals, the mind is very closed off, right? It's very hard, like a molten rock. It's very fixed. It's very set, right? But in that being fixed and set, a lot of individuals find it very difficult to navigate through their emotional pain and I'm not good enough and their shame, because they're kind of, it's almost like they're just set in that, right? That's just the way that it is, right? So overall, with this transition that's happening on this planet as we continue to move forward, is we are all needing to feed our mind. And we never really thought of, I need to feed my mind, I just feed my body and that's it. But our mind needs to be fed and needs to be nourished now more than ever. And you can see who has a nourished mind, you can see who doesn't have a nourished mind, because those who have a nourished mind tend to have higher creativity, tend to have a higher intelligence. Now, you can talk about this as an IQ, but we can also talk about higher intelligence as an intuition, psychic ability, having awareness of self. That's also higher intelligence, having a deep awareness of yourself and having a meditative mind. That's higher intelligence, not who's the smartest. Overall, you become very smart when you have intuition, when you know how to pay attention, you know how to concentrate, you have self-awareness, like an inner self-knowledge about what's going on inside your mind, right? And you have a meditative mind, meaning your mind is unified, right? Your mind has a sound current, like a mantra that is that's very strong in a very neutral sort of path, right? A very sort of rhythmic neutrality of the mind. And that's higher intelligence, not, oh, I'm the smartest in this, that, and the other, right? And that's what the mantra does, because within a lot of these mantras that we have, like even Sanskrit, for example, a lot of these particularly sound currents, they were not established in this patriarchal paradigm. They were not even created at this time of 5,500 years, 7,000 going to 12,000 years that we've been in this patriarchal domain. A lot of this what we call the mantra was actually created in a matriarchal paradigm when we were in a higher dimensional reality on planet Earth. So we call it Atlantis, Lemuria, ancient Egypt, right? We're not going to see this in our history textbook because a lot of it is deemed unbelievable, like, meaning I don't believe it. It's not real. It's like a sort of a trance, or it's just like it's like an altered state of consciousness, but it's not practical. It doesn't exist, right? There's no actual facts of it, right? Because it's very old. It's hard to find a lot of facts about something that firstly was kind of erased, right? And secondly, it was a sort of a more evolved human, right? And the patriarchal doesn't want to be told that this kind of human design before the patriarchal 12,000 years period was actually one of a higher intelligence, right? But in the fall, right, in the fall of that matriarchal sort of civilization, there was this period where human was basically brought down, right? I don't know if this was a great flood that lasted, thousands of years, and then when that ended, there was another human design, which was basically kind of at the start, right? At the start, like starting over again kind of thing. And that was where the patriarchal sort of legacy began, right? So we, at this time, are opening up our mind, and we're discovering even like history that we're not seeing in our history textbook, like history that we're accessing through like a Akashic record, or we're starting to become aware of feelings and thoughts that don't belong to our parents or our grandparents or really the past at all. And we're starting to become aware of this sort of this cosmic vibration that, well, let's be honest, we did not experience in the past for a long time. So a lot of us we're like, where does this come from? Why am I having this sort of altered state of consciousness? What is this spiritual awakening? Where does it come from? And a lot of these kids are very curious. They want to explore. They want to discover, right? They want to capture it. They want to interpret. They want to understand. And some of them, they want to very badly, because they know that these realities a lot of people are choosing have no energy. There's no power to it. It's like drained. And it's like crazy, basically, right? So a lot of us we're getting these sort of we're unlocking the mind, and we're kind of retrieving, almost like we're archaeologists of the mind. And in archaeologists of the mind, we're starting to find these ancient sites in the mind that we didn't find and wasn't showing up in our parents and grandparents. We're starting to discover these ancient memories that were not our parents or grandparents. We're starting to discover these mantras, these ancient like lifestyles and thought forms and behaviors and habits. We're like archaeologists, and we're digging in the mind, and we're finding chambers within the mind that were locked before. But in opening, we're starting to discover that there is more to the mind than what we know. There's more information than what we know in our past. and that really there's information in the mind. When you unlock the mind and unlock the many chambers, right, you start to discover that the mind actually has a cosmic vibration that basically like a intergalactic web that's able to access, like consciousness, be able to access higher creativity. And higher creativity just means you're able to access not only the planet, but any planet that has ever interacted with Earth, right? Other planets such as Pleiades, Arcturus, and their beings and things of that nature. You can connect with the creative flow, the creative accomplishment, and the creative genius of any of people on Earth and of beings that are not on Earth. That's what consciousness is. Higher creativity. The sound current is higher intelligence, and consciousness and sound current basically is the sort of the mind miracle, right? Where the mind is vast and the mind is most open and expansive. When consciousness and higher intelligence is very much worked, it's unlocked, right? Higher creativity, higher intelligence, the consciousness and the sound current, right? So the higher creativity, a lot of young people experience that sometimes in drugs or plant medicine and these kinds of things. You can even experience it in meditation, self-hypnosis. You can even experience it out in nature, these kinds of things. Where this higher creativity, all of a sudden people are just starting to get ideas and have visions and have thoughts and habits and behaviors that they don't belong anywhere in the past. It has nothing to do with the past, but everything to do with the future. It's like this cosmic vibration when you do have this higher higher intelligence and higher creativity, this cosmic vibration that you are, right? It gives you this access to this cosmic web. And that's very much what we're meant to be as human species 2.0. We're not meant to go to space in our spaceships and try to travel and find other planets, which we're going to do that anyways, but we're meant to really travel through the spaces in our own mind to discover other planets in other time periods, and in ancient periods and other dimensions. That's really what we call the space voyage. It's not so much let's go to space in our rockets and try to find Earth 2.0 in some other galaxy, right? It's more so let us go in the space of our mind and let us find other dimensions. Let's unlock these portals, and let's kind of go into other chambers of the mind and find other sort of just regions of the mind that we've never found before. Because the mind is very, very vast, and it's almost like Earth in space. Like, we only know our solar system, that's it. But we know in the science community that, in astronomy, we know that our solar system isn't even like a dot compared to the other places, right, in our galaxy, and the many other solar systems in our galaxy. That's the same thing that goes with our mind. We are functioning from just a perspective of the patriarch, and it's very limiting because the perspective of the patriarch in this mind has really nothing to do with human expansion, or really nothing to do with sovereignty of mind or higher creativity. The patriarchal perspective has everything to do with the prophet of the patriarch, or the authority of the patriarch, right? Or the patriarch being everywhere in your mind, right? Being the primary agenda. It has nothing to do really with higher creativity or higher intelligence, right? If it was, then you would see a more well-rounded educational system, economy, sort of lifestyle, in the way the belief, the sort of core beliefs of people. It wouldn't be emotional pain and I'm not good enough and shame, That wouldn't be sort of the core common emotions every human being has, right? If expansion, sovereignty, and higher creativity, higher intelligence was the patriarchal perspective and the main belief, right? So we are now having to really not only nourish our mind, but we're teaching our mind, right, how to be expansive again, how to have higher creativity, higher intelligence. And again, we're leveling up, and those people who are not nourishing their mind are malnourished in the mind and are crazy or dead, like their mind is dead, and they're crazy in the mind, or they're disturbed in the mind, or the swamp in the mind is making them quite creepy or even scary, and they're scary in their own mind. They're haunted in their own mind, right? They're consumed by all of the garbage in the mind, right? And they can't even get themselves to think higher, think wiser, because the mind is completely engulfed by the past, right? And it doesn't even have to be your past of you as a person. It could be the past of the parents, the grandparents, and all that comes with the past, the runoff, right? The runoff of the past. So the Aquarian age is really about cleaning up the mind stream, like literally like a river. Like you clean it up. If there's trash, we're finding, you going and cleaning it up, right? Taking out these past memories, these past behaviors, habits, mindsets, whatever it is, clear it out. And the best way I've discovered to clear it out, even more so than affirmation, is recitation of mantra, because the recitation of particular mantras are very powerful, because not just embedded is an affirmation of a neutral mind or positive mind, but also it gives you a sort of affirmation of cosmic awareness or creative mind in higher intelligence. That's why mantra is seen as the store, right? It stores consciousness, and it also stores the sound current. The mantra stores the higher vibration of human in its consciousness and its sound current. So mantra is basically, it has preserved, it has kept the human design, the original human design, or the higher dimensional human. It has kept it. It has stored it within its sound, within its sound, right? So those who chant it or recite it, basically what they're doing is they're activating that sort of locked part of themselves in the mind. They're activating it and they're unlocking it, because like crystals can store up to, millions and millions of time of history. Crystals, right? Millions and millions, like sort of information, right, can store in a crystal. Same thing as the mind can store so much, but it's just we don't know how to sort of we don't know how to view all of that, because we don't have the right sort of perception. We are not expansive enough in our perception and perspective to take it in, right? Because we have so many beliefs that kind of create this delay, or create this sort of distortion, or just create this resistance or this sort of stubbornness, right? We're all kind of set in our mind, and we're set in our mind because the patriarch has whipped us and sort of attacked us to be in this particular mindset that is about keeping us obedient, but not keeping us sovereign, keeping us obedient, and keeping us sort of trapped in the mind where we don't know how to manifest, and we don't know how to lead. We just know how to be obedient, like kind of, right? But we don't know how to lead, and that's why very few people on this planet know how to lead, because very few people have the sovereignty of the mind to lead, right? Because we're not trained to lead. We're trained to be obedient and to let the patriarch be, the almighty, and we're weak and poor, that kind of thing. So in the mind, when we, unlock the mind, like there's so much information, but if we have a sort of, if we're taking that all in through a perception of a belief that like I'm not good enough, emotional pain and a shame, you bet all that information may come in, and it may come in very quickly, it may come in very shockingly, but we're not going to get any of it. It's going to come in one ear and out the other. So that's why individuals, who do have higher creativity, especially in history, a lot of times initially nobody understands them. Like nobody gets what they're trying to do. Nobody understands it because it goes in one ear out the other. But as what their creativity, as it evolves and as it continues to show up and to show out, is that creativity, the higher creativity, basically it sort of deconstructs that sort of hardness within human, so that human can have this sort of flexibility and then eventually this openness to be able to understand, wait a minute, these paintings of Da Vinci actually have a deeper underlining meaning that I now understand because my perception is expansive enough to understand. But during the time, people are like, what the hell is this? What, there is no meaning, it's just a painting, right, of Jesus, that kind of thing, right? And a lot of times that expansion of the perception of human can take decades, it can take centuries for somebody to look at the past and the past art or Renaissance and be like, whoa, this was deeper than what I thought. Da Vinci was actually futurist. He was actually speaking to the people that were, maybe 20, 30 years in the future, or even centuries in the future, thousands of years in the future, who knows? Right, that's how much Da Vinci's mind, one among many as a visionary, that's how sort of he was able to tap into information. Really, it's the futurist that's able to tap into this cosmic web or cosmic, web of information, right? And that higher intelligence, higher creativity, that consciousness and sound current, it really gives you like this, you're a voyager, you're interdimensional traveler, and you can travel through many realms of thought, and you're not bound or tied or trapped in these many realms of thought. And that's also what mantra is about. Mantra contains sound current and consciousness, higher creativity, sound current, higher intelligence, these kinds of things, and basically you use a mantra to travel. So when a shaman travels through these other dimensions, darker dimensions, higher dimensions, there's a mantra the shaman uses and the mantra in its side is the consciousness and the sound current that gives them this ability to not get bound to anything, to not get attached, to not get into a realm within the mind and get kind of stuck there, right? Because the mantra is a master manifester. And that's why we use these mantras, or in the past, in the ancient past, in ancient Egypt, because it was a way for us to travel through, right, these many chambers, these many areas, the subconscious, the future, the remote past, and these things, right? And be able to have the right sort of perception, the right sort of vessel, right, to take it in and to understand, right? Because that's what we all are trying to do. We're trying to understand, but we don't have the right vessel or container to understand. That we don't have the right perception that could take it in. And because our perception is very average or very amateur, right? Because of the belief that, we're all programmed to take on, that really has nothing to do with understanding anything beyond just the patriarch and God of ruled by the patriarch, right? Because to really understand, to have that perception, and that is really having that sovereignty, right? Because that's the leadership. And the one thing about traveling as voyagers, interdimensional travelers, or even coming into this incarnation and dying, going to the afterlife, is being a leader. And that's what mantra has always done, is made poor people into leaders. It has made weak people into leaders. It has made chaotic people into leaders. It has made disorder beyond disorder in the land into a leader, right? And that's what the mantra does. And that's why it's becoming, it's sort of what's going to become of this movement forward, in this new age movement, right? We look at herbalism, we look at, herbal tea, tea house, we look at yoga, Kundalini yoga, we look at self-psychology, courses on manifestation, courses on astrology, cosmology, all these things about the health and wellness and naturalist living and environmentalist, these kinds of things. When we really look at the how we level up beyond health of the herbs and these kinds of things, is really the nourishing of the mind, which we can do through herbs. Herbs do nourish the mind, right? But we're also going even deeper into the reparenting of the mind and its attachment to the past, right? And how we really cut that cord or remake that kind of connection is through the mantra, because the mantra is directly about linking the mind to a more futurist and kind of cleaning and sort of repairing this sort of attachment to the past and the past issue and the problem and the past dysfunction and the trauma and the past poorness and poverty and I'm not good enough and all these kinds of patterning that are associated with the past. The mantra is able to really bring the mind a sense of it restores the mind basically over time, or through recitation, right? It restores the mind back to its more natural rhythm, which is more about the mind is expanding towards the future, right? It's about imagination of the future. It's about imagination in general. Imagination, it's about creativity, right? It's about manifestation. It's about a sense of mastery. It's about a sense of creating a reality in which a human being desires, and creating a reality in which a human being feels accomplished in this physical human existence, right? And the sort of victory of the mind is feeling, right, again, going to your heart and feeling in the heart this space of possibility. Because really, that's really what the mind just wants to hold in the body, is just space of possibility, not of past and past, space of possibility. And what the heart really is about, when we look at the feelings and the feelings and the feelings of the heart, granted it's feelings, is that the heart really wants to bring to a human being as much emotional fulfillment as the heart can, right? Emotional fulfillment through grit and charisma and through health and through harmony and through joy and through self-expression. But it is of the sovereignty of the mind that, again, it's the same thing as the openness, the possibility of the mind, that makes it possible for the heart to actually express such feelings without attack, without these past thoughts gripping to the emotions and creating all these extra damages. So I wanted to share this with you to kind of let you know, I guess, what we're doing and transitioning into as what's happening and kind of what we're desiring, and the kind of the focus for this transitional period, and how that's moving us forward into the Aquarian age, and then eventually deeper into the Aquarian age, and then definitely we're going to see totally different kind of human design coming out of people on planet Earth, which is going to be very, very much, you're going to see human beings that really are going to have higher creativity, higher intelligence, and within that you're going to see human beings that actually are starting to move beyond the past and the shame and emotional pain and I'm not good enough, and you're going to see human beings actually starting to really become this sort of futuristic mind. We call it a cosmic vibration, where their main sort of feeling that they have consistently is a sense of spiritual victory, rather than all this, past behavior, habit, and thought form that doesn't give them energy. You're going to feel human beings, there's a lot of energy of spiritual victory within people, and then the people who don't level up, they're going to feel very spiritually attacked, or spiritually weak, or just spiritually like unfulfilled, and just kind of feeling stuck. And then you're going to feel another group of people who feel spiritually again, they feel resistant, right? They feel spiritually resistant because they're so hard and they're so like just heavy, right? But overall, the majority of the people that eventually we'll see over time is more of human beings who are beginning to work on, again, mantra recitation, and what that means, putting that into their culture, their lifestyle, their education, their economy, their environment, their community landscaping. You're going to see more, again, mantra and sort of in a trans mantra in a sort of image is yantra. So you're going to start to see this within human is this mantra, is the sound and the kind of current, that kind of invisible current that you can feel in a community, and the yantra, which represents that sort of visual. Like when you look at the community, you see this beauty that just naturally wires your brain for spiritual victory, right? And we're going to start to see that more in the community, in this sort of, places all around the planet. As the individual, as the human starts to really become a good archaeologist of the mind and start to really find these sacred sites in the mind and begin to realize, like, wait a minute, I haven't even really been going in the mind. Like I've been living in these thoughts, or believing these thoughts, having these thought forms of the past, and I've been living just in like one area of the mind. I haven't even really connected with any of it, really. And when people really start to connect with that and start to really let the mantra, the sound current, the consciousness kind of connect them to like a higher creativity or higher intelligence, where they feel intuitive and they just feel very like creatively like capable, right? That's when you're going to see like human beings really being restored, right? And in that sort of being restored, they're the feelings they have, they will feel very, very fulfilled, very, very they will have this sort of feelings of challenge, because the heart can bring challenge, but also these feelings of victory, because that's the heart. The heart is victory, right? The heart is victory, right? And the mind is possibility, right? And when they're working together, that possibility brings victory, and that victory brings great accomplishment to the human being, right? And I feel like this is why we're going through all this depression, is because we're really flushing, like purging and releasing a lot of this dirt and this swamp within the mind, right? That's kind of blocking our victory and keeping our emotions bound and tight and withheld from us, right? So that, moving through the depression, getting all the way through the depression, right? And we begin to, when we kind of clear out, whatever needs to be flushed, we start to really come into new thoughts and new choices. Because that's really what this depression is wanting us to go through. It wants us to have new choices and new thoughts, right? But sometimes the thing is so heavy on the psyche, whatever it is, the past is so, whatever thing in the past, the pattern, habit, behavior is so heavy that sometimes the depression is the only way for it to really like decompose, basically. And that's why we don't feel good, because we know there's something dying inside of us. Something's decomposing inside of our mind, inside of our feelings. And that's why we're depressed, because something is decomposing and we don't feel good about it. Because who wants to have like decomposing things going on inside you? But really, when you let it decompose and you let it return, because decomposition is just something turning to its original state, right? Like, a deer, like a dead deer decomposes, and eventually everything it is will become just its basic ingredients, right? Look, and it become its basic self, right? Just cells, just cells that are just kind of there, right? And they're most kind of, just to become recycled into vitality. So that decomposition really is about, we're having this death, and it's bringing us back to our basic cells. Cells in the brain, cells in our emotions, right? There's cells in our blood, our water, which is driven by our emotions. And there's the cells in our brain, which, right? It's bringing us back to those basic cells for them to be recycled back into vitality, right? But really what helps us to kind of go through that journey, which is very much a spiritual journey within ourselves, right, is, we call it a spiritual awakening, is the mantra, right? The mantra is like rhythm. It's like a guide that can help us to go through that, all the way through until we reach the other side, which is rebirth, right? There's dying cells all the time so that they can be reborn. And a lot of us were having dying patterns in our brain, dying habits and behaviors and beliefs in our brain. And it's very kind of difficult because there's so much death, so it makes you feel not so good when you have so much death going on inside you. But if people were to just keep allowing it, right, just let that death happen and keep that mantra going, once it really goes through, just like a dead deer, really the dead cells are just being recycled into something else, into vitality. And the more that you keep your physical vitality and your emotional vitality, mental vitality very strong through the mantra, the more that what dies and wants to die can go through its process, and the more that it can be reborn. Because what really wants to be reborn within us is the dead cells want to be reborn into not the same as the old cells. They want to be reborn, and they want to be reborn into a model or a blueprint, a sort of pattern or sequence the cells have in interacting with each other that's at a more of a higher vibration. The cells don't want to die and then just become reborn into the same cells. They really want to reorganize, repattern themselves, and take on a different sort of a different relationship with each other, the cells in our body, right? And how we really create that sort of blueprint or that new design or make that new choice for ourselves is really inviting into our mind, into our heart, like a practice of this altered state of consciousness, a practice of we call higher consciousness and higher intelligence, right? What it mean higher intelligence again is intuition, paying attention to yourself, self-awareness, self-knowledge. Higher creativity again is about it's about talent and gift, having a vision, having that sort of altered state of experience where you are expansive. You're expansive in you have this level of sovereignty and this leadership to your thinking and to your belief, right? Whatever that is. Really no beliefs. We don't really want any belief systems. We just want this possibility that's vast, right? Really, we don't want any sort of confinement going on, right? Because the mind isn't really about confinement. So, and then inviting into the heart of the feelings, what the feelings, the water of the feelings really want the water of nourishment. Your feelings really want to be nourished. They want to be nurtured. They want to be cared for, right? That's what we call being a parent to yourself, being kind to yourself, being caring to yourself, right? Having a practice of self-love so that the waters of your emotions can really be soothed by your self-love, right? And that's kind of what's going to help us to like be what is trying to become of us, right? Which is we're expanding, we're recycling our past, whatever that is, not into the same thing of what happened in the past. We're really recycling this past, and we're really eliminating everything we think, believe, and whatever it is we feel by really getting involved in ideas and creativity that involves a future that has nothing to do with the past. It has everything to do with the new journey, the new voyage, the new human design that has nothing to do with the past, but everything to do with the ancient wisdom that really has everything to do with a higher dimensional future. So I'll leave you guys with that.